What is good, everybody, man? Let me know if y'all can hear me in the chat. Expecting this to be a little bit of a shorter show, man. Every year in the playoffs, the shows get a little bit shorter. Crowd gets a little bit lighter up until the national championship because everyone's teams keep getting eliminated, and there's fewer and fewer games and teams to talk about in each episode. But the way I'm gonna structure kind of the quarterfinals, semifinals, moving on. We got the Celebration Bowl next week, so that'll be a part of the weekly preview episode. I'll have the roundtable each week as well. But also, man, we're just going to talk about some of the transfer portal things happening. Coaching searches are going to be up and running just about everywhere in college football, especially at the FCS level. You got Texas A&M Commerce, North Alabama, all announced their coach earlier this week. Talk a little bit about that moving forward. But man, hit the like button. You already know the call in number 701-779-9585. And after we preview the games, I'm down to talk about whatever you guys want. I know there's still a lot of talk about Prime headed to Colorado, man. That's on every channel, every platform. There's been Twitter Spaces for probably since the announcement every day about different angles about him taking the job and what that potentially means for Jackson State and et cetera moving on. So hit the like button, man. Let me know what y'all want to talk about. And yes, so the reason this is going to be a bit of a shorter stream tonight, Ron, is I got a flight to catch in the morning. I'll be flying out of New Orleans tomorrow morning, and I will be flying into Bozeman, Montana tomorrow. Um, I'll be up in Bozeman for the Friday night game against William and Mary. And I just got done today shopping for all the things I'm going to need. I think the kickoff time temperature in Bozeman this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, is like 12 degrees. So it's going to be freezing. I'll be working the sidelines as a photographer. Shout out to everyone up at Montana State for making that happen. And I'm working behind the scenes right now. I may have an interview with some people on the staff for Montana State coming this week as well when I get up to Bozeman tomorrow. So stay tuned for some announcements on that. If not, they will be coming later in the year. So really, really excited to get up to Bozeman. It's going to be terrifyingly cold, man. I had to go get a new jacket. I had to go get gloves. I went and got me a face covering. Man, it's gonna be cold. And man, the low that night, like the wind chill, if I'm not mistaken, is gonna be somewhere around 3 degrees, Dave. It's gonna be like 3 degrees for that game. I mean, I don't know why the kickoff. I get it. It's because it's mountain time, but the fact that the kickoff is at 9:15 on a Friday night is outrageous, in my opinion. That you at least give me a Saturday afternoon game, man. And so, luckily, the bad weather, well, aka a lot of the snow, is supposed to be held off till the weekend. So that's the only good thing for me, Dave, is that the snow is holding off for a few days. But I'll be flying out Saturday after the game. But I'm really, really excited to experience a Bozeman football game. And it's two of the teams that I've been really high on this year, and I think both of them, whoever wins this game is going to have a great shot to go and win the national title. In my opinion, I'm really really excited to see William and Mary up close, and of course, Montana State's been one of my favorite teams to watch all season long. And on top of that, there is some rumors that Cam Newton potentially could be at the game this weekend. His younger brother Kalen Newton is a wide receiver for William and Mary. I might get to meet my guy Cam Newton, so that would be that would be a big positive standing out there. Standing out there in the cold. He said, "Go to Ted's." All right, man. Right, I'll go try out Ted's. I got 2 days to spend. I got pretty much all day tomorrow. I land, I think, about 1 o'clock Mountain Time tomorrow. So I'm going to. I needed some places to eat. I'm also going to go to downtown Bozeman and experience some of the things that they got around the city. But the quarterfinals are here, and we only got 4 matchups to talk about. I divided the slides into each bracket, so these two teams, whoever wins these 2 matchups, will face each other next weekend in the semifinals. But the first game, of course, Montana State versus William and Mary. This is the game I'll be at, and I'm really excited because it's a matchup of 2 really good defenses and also two really good rushing attacks, but they attack you in such different ways. With Montana State, they can attack you with both quarterbacks. They can attack you with a multitude of running backs. And the offensive line has been extremely explosive, and they even can get the wide receivers involved in creative ways. While William and Mary, it's more of just a downhill power attack. Bronson Yoder's gonna just try to be more physical than you, run downhill, and then also you got Malachi Amoa, who is extremely explosive and could be someone you got to deal with in terms of that almost like the lightning and thunder type of combination that they have there. And also, I think the defensive line in William and Mary, this is going to be one of the more interesting matchups that I think they've seen this year. You have Nate Lind, you have John Pius, who was announced to yesterday that he's going to be in the final three for the Buck Buchanan Award race, which I'm extremely excited to see who wins that. But this is a show out game for them. If Nate Lind and John Pius are held without making a big impact, Montana State's going to have a great shot to win this game, but they are going to have to play in the backfield of the Bobcats, and there's not many teams this season, at least, that have been able to do that. Montana State, I think, has the most impressive rushing attack in the country right now. 332 yards per game. They're averaging almost 7 yards per carry, and they've rushed for 42 touchdowns. They've run for almost 4,000 yards this season as a team, and nobody thus far has been able to really stop them up to this point. And they have so many different weapons and they're getting healthy at just the right time. And I think that that scares a lot of teams. Tommy Millott hit the 1,000-yard mark last week, 7 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. Sean Chambers is at 18 touchdowns at the backup quarterback spot. Elijah Elliott did a great job in taking over the starting running back role. But let's not forget Isaiah Afonso comes back from injury last week. His first action all year announced that he will be back for the 2023 season. And Afonso went for 91, 9 yards per carry, coming off a injury riddled recover, just his recovery from an injury riddled end of last season. And this is going to be, I think, a matchup. We see Afonso really take hold of that running back one spot. We've seen Marky Johnson, we've seen Elijah Elliott, we've seen both quarterbacks be the lead rusher for Montana State, but I would not be surprised if this is the weekend they try to get Afonso going right before this key stretch run through the semifinals and national championship, where they're probably going to want to have Afonso running at 100%. And then on top of that, an underrated aspect, I think, of Montana State's offense this year has been Willie Patterson. I don't think he gets talked about a lot because of how well Montana State runs to football, but he brings a very interesting vertical threat to this offense because they're going to just pound it with the run game. And then as soon as you're not expecting it, you saw it last week, they're going to pull out some sort of play action or trick play, and they're going to go deep. And most of the time, Willie Patterson is that guy. 567, 9 touchdowns through the air this year for Willie Patterson. And he's a guy that can go win those one-on-one matchups on the outside. And he brings kind of that electricity to a wide receiver unit that really lacks, I would say, big time names outside of Willie Patterson, Ravi Alston, Derek Snell. None of those guys really get talked about that much. And a Marquis Johnson was moved from wide receiver to running back due to injuries in the questionable depth that Montana State had at the running back spot early this season. So that's the one issue, William, is that if I feel like if William and Mary throws 8 in the box, I the question becomes, does the secondary for the Tribe have enough to stop the passing attack of what we know Tommy Mellott can throw the football. I know he gets a lot of credit for running, but he has an arm on him. And they got Willie Patterson. Can anyone else step up, though? I think you take your chances early, possibly, William. But Montana State if Montana State's able to throw the football, then I think William and Mary is going to find themselves in a really unwinnable situation, because then if you start unloading the box, man, they're going to start running the football right down your throat. And so early, I would test some 8 in the box, but if they can't make Montana State commit to throwing the football and the secondary force some turnovers, Jalen Jones and those guys for William and Mary, I think this game could get really, really, really tough really fast for William and Mary, especially on the road. Because William, one thing we all know is if in Bozeman you get down early, that crowd gets involved, Montana State gets that momentum built up, man, it's really, really hard to get it turned back around. And so I think that's the one worry about stacking the box. But you do the key for William and Mary is if you do make them throw that defensive line that I just talked about with John Pius, Nate Lynn, they got to get to the quarterback. They got to get Tommy Mellott off his spot and make him uncomfortable in the pocket. John Pius, 11 and a half sacks this year, almost 20 tackles for loss, also leads William and Mary in tackles this year. And Nate Lynn with 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss this year have been really, really hard to handle. But in the secondary, Ryan Poole, 10 pass breakups this year. Jalen Jones with 4 interceptions. It really and truly has been a freshman sensation. And also Marcus Barnes has done his thing in the coverage game too. Ty Freeland you have back there. William and Mary's weakest part of their defense, I do think, is their secondary right now, or at least their least proven. And so that's going to be a matchup to watch. If William and Mary stops the run, what gives out? Is it the passing attack of Montana State, or is the secondary of William and Mary win that matchup? Now, offensively, this could be a big challenge. Montana State has been, I think, better than the statistics show in the run. They've been a little bit more consistent stopping the run, holding teams to under 130 per game this year, about 4 yards per carry. But their secondary has been a little bit porous. And that makes me think, what if Darius Wilson can have a week like he did last week against Gardner Webb, where he can put up 300 through the air and turn this game into a little bit of a shootout, man, does that favor William and Mary at all? Darius Wilson is the key here, because I think Montana State, like William said, I think they're actually going to put 8 in the box. Darius Wilson has not really been proven in terms of being a downfield passer this year, and I think people still look at him as more of a quote unquote game manager, or someone who is just going to lead this offense in terms of making sure they don't make big turnovers. But 240 through the air, 3 touchdowns last week against Gardner Webb, and then also that Villanova game, you put up 3 touchdowns as well. He had 227 against Richmond in that CAA game at the last week of the season. So there's been moments of Rhode Island game, the Delaware game, the Elon game was a great one too, but there's been a few games this season where he hasn't been able to produce in volume through the air. And so that's the one question about Darius Wilson is, can he lead the offense if he has to? Because Bronson Yoder, 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, 700 yards from Malachi Amoa. And then you still got Donovan Lester at that third spot with 8 rushing touchdowns, averaging 7 yards per carry. It's going to come down to which team can establish the run. And because there hasn't been a team all year that's been able to slow down Montana State. And Tommy Mellott's been in this situation. I can't say the same for Darius Wilson. Plus, it's on the road. It's going to be under sub 10 degrees. There could be snow. The crowd's going to be raucous. I like Montana State to win this matchup this weekend. I think it's going to be a close game early. I just trust Montana State's going to make the plays late to pull out this win. Give me Montana State over William and Mary by 7 this weekend in Bozeman. Now, the down on the top side of the bracket, or up on the top side of the bracket, South Dakota State, Holy Cross. These two winners will play each other again. South Dakota State beat Holy Cross in the spring I believe it was a spring first round game, 31-3. Holy Cross has never made it to the semifinals before in school history. They've hit in 12 wins for the first time in school history. There's a lot of firsts this year. But I'm just going to be honest, I have major concerns about one matchup, and it's the rushing attack of Holy Cross going up against the absolute dominant rushing defense of South Dakota State. That is the matchup of all matchups this weekend, because we know what Matthew Solka can do. He put up 3,300 total yards this year, 36 total touchdowns. He has 10 100-yard rushing games in his career too. He can do it on the ground and through the air. Peter Oliver broke out for 175 last week, but you're going up against a South Dakota State defense that has been absolutely dominant week in and week out. They've only allowed 2 teams to rush for over 100 yards. They have held, I believe, 9 teams under 250 yards passing. They play such disciplined, fast, smart defense that it's just hard to create explosive plays on them. And that's really what cost North Dakota State against them. And it's why everyone that they faced in the FCS has not been able to get the win, is because they struggle to move the football. I do think South Dakota State's offense, compared to what we thought it was going to be coming into the season, is a little bit overrated. I think if Holy Cross can start putting up some points, it puts a lot of pressure on South Dakota State's offense. And that could be a big question mark, because Holy Cross's defense can force turnovers. Devin Haskins in that secondary, 13 interceptions this year. That they very, very stingy. But can you force South Dakota State to put the ball in the air? That's the question. Isaiah Davis, an absolute stud at running back. He's been consistent throughout the playoffs, even in that spring national championship run the Jacks had. He was so consistent week in and week out. And last week, South Dakota State absolutely exploded against Delaware, and they were more physical at the point of attack. They ran the ball better. They got pressure on the quarterback. I believe they had 6 sacks against the Blue Hens last week. Can Holy Cross keep up with that? And I think that is going to be the biggest question mark for me. And I don't see Holy Cross coming out with this one. I'll be honest with you guys. I think Mark Gronkowski is going to make some plays through the air. They're too balanced on offense, and I think the defense right now is probably the best defense in the entire FCS playoffs. I think South Dakota State makes another statement this weekend. Give me South Dakota State 42-21 over Holy Cross at home in Brookings. And if I'm not mistaken, someone can double check me on this. I believe the weather is going to be bad in this one too. I think this one is going to be not fun for Holy Cross up there in Brookings. So I like South Dakota State in a big win over Holy Cross. And on the other side of the bracket, these two games I think are going to be much closer. And I know a lot of people are counting Samford out, and it's really going to come down to the health of Michael Hyers. Michael Hyers' wrist injury. He's a game time decision, according to head coach Chris Hatcher, who mentioned in the press conference that they're not going to make a decision on him until game time. If he is out, it becomes extremely difficult for me to see Samford pulling out a win in the Fargo Dome, where North Dakota State has only lost one game in the Fargo Dome since the move to FCS in the FCS playoffs. I believe they're like 37-1 or something like that in the Fargo Dome. It is hard to win in Fargo in the FCS playoffs. And to do it with a true freshman quarterback who was kind of thrust in due to injury, that's going to be extremely difficult. And listen, Quincy, I believe it's Crediton. He did great last week. 5 touchdowns, over 400 yards of total offense. But this North Dakota State defense is not Southeastern Louisiana. And I'll say this: if he can pull it off, it will be one of the most single historic moments in the FCS playoffs. If a true freshman quarterback goes into the Fargo Dome and hands North Dakota State their second loss in school history in the FCS playoffs at home, that they're gonna have to build a statue of the kid, because that means he would have to go in here and ball out. Kendall Watson and Chandler Smith are going to have to play huge if Quincy is the starting quarterback this weekend for Samford. Both of these guys need about 50 yards to top the 1,000 yard mark. And North Dakota State secondary, I feel like at the corner spot, isn't necessarily elite. I think Michael Tutsi at safety does this thing, but he's more of an in the box safety. I don't know if they have the guys at corner that even Samford saw last week in Southeastern Louisiana. I think Zy Alexander is still a better corner than anyone on North Dakota State's roster right this second. And so those two guys are going to have to go big games, going to have huge games. And I think a lot of the best pass defense for North Dakota State has been the pressure they've been able to get on their quarterback. They're only allowing about 150 yards per game through the air, but a lot of it is, and quarterbacks right now are getting harassed by the front seven, and a lot of it's due to Spencer Wagey. He was one of my first guests on my podcast, and I love talking to Spencer Wagey. I need to get him back on. 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, overcoming a big knee injury last season. If he gets pressure on Quincy, man, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to stop. And there was a lot of question marks with the front seven in North Dakota State due to injuries, due to some transfers. But Spencer Wagey has kind of been that, I would say, unifying force in that front seven. And he has played elite football this year. The linebacker spot, they play great sideline to sideline. They're so disciplined, everything you would expect from a North Dakota State front seven. Here's the thing with Samford, though, is we know what they are offensively. Defensively, it terrifies me in this matchup. Montana came in last week with a solid. Well, I think Montana's defense is multiple levels better than what Samford is right now. And North Dakota State walked in there without All-American Hunter Lipke and rushed for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns on Montana. And they're coming into this one. Kobe Johnson's rolling. Tamarick Williams is rolling. And you got a Samford rushing attack that's allowing over that is allowing over 170 yards per game on the ground. And last weekend against Southeastern Louisiana, who, listen, Carlos Washington, a stud, all props to him. They haven't seen a rushing attack like they're going to see against the Bison this weekend, and they gave up 348 yards rushing last week to Southeastern Louisiana at home. That is a recipe for disaster this weekend. I think North Dakota State gives up some points, and I think Samford is able to make some things happen explosively down the field, and this might be the first team to hit the 200-yard mark against the Bison secondary. But I agree with Leon here. He already beat me to it. I think they're going to run the football so efficiently that they're going to win this time of possession probably like 38. It's probably going to be somewhere around like the 38-minute mark. North Dakota State's going to hold the ball, possibly even 40. They're going to keep the offense. Kendall Watson, Michael Hires, Quincy, whoever's starting at quarterback, that wide receiving core, Jalen at running back, they're going to keep them on the sidelines, and they are just going to run the football right down Samford's throat. I like the Bison winning this matchup, getting to the semifinals. I like giving the Bison 34-20 this weekend over the Bulldogs in the Fargo Dome, and they continue the streak. And the Bison have a shot to get back to Frisco next week, facing the winner of what I think is the game of the week. If I had to pick probably the most toss-up game of the week, it's Incarnate versus Sac State. I'm excited for Montana State, William & Mary. I think that's going to be a great game. But, man, this game to me is a 50-50 game. Even when I hit to go live, I wasn't sure who I was going to pick in this matchup. Incarnate Word, we know what the offense is. The offense is elite. Lindsey Scott's going to put up points on everybody. Everyone, I mean, they're averaging 200 yards rushing per game. They're putting up almost 400 yards passing through the air per game, almost 11 yards per attempt. They've thrown for 57 touchdowns coming into this one. And in a matchup against Furman, where I thought the defense could be a little bit more physical, they still found a way to just put up 41 points. Even with Lindsey Scott not playing his best. Lindsey Scott threw 2 pretty much pick sixes last week, and they still found a way at the end of the game to win. And I think the defense for Incarnate Word is a bit underrated. I don't know how you guys feel. Coming into this one, Incarnate Word's only given up 20 points per game. They're holding teams to less than 3.5 yards rushing and holding teams to under 200 yards through the air, and have only given up 10 touchdowns while forcing 12 interceptions. That's pretty good defense, especially when you have it's such an elite offense, I would say. Because usually when you have an explosive offense, your defense is consistently too tired to stay on the field and pull anything out. They've been really good defensively, even with their offense not really dominating the time of possession. The key becomes sack, state force, and turnovers. Last week would have been a slaughter if Lindsey Scott doesn't throw those 2 interceptions. I mean, it wouldn't even have been close. Marcus Cooper's averaging 7 yards per carry. Lindsey Scott led the team in rushing last week. He's catching his win. He's accurate. He's efficient. He hasn't turned the ball over a lot this year other than last week. and Kalechi and Lebechi at linebackers approaching 100 tackles, almost 10 for loss. Stephen Parker, Sam Latham, um, Cam Preston at defensive tackle. The list goes on and on of guys who can get to the quarterback and make plays. Chris Whitaker as well led the FCS in sacks up to about week 4 or 5. Caleb Culp at the safety spot is almost like a Michael Tutsi type of guy who can play in the box at safety and make plays all over the field. I think Incarnate Word has the team to compete. I know a lot of people looked at this team as one of those teams that we've seen them. I mean, I'm sure Daniel, Leon, everyone in the chat can probably put some in there. We've seen these teams who come in with explosive offenses and get boat raced early. The Cole Kelly teams, you even have some of the Eastern Washington teams with Eric Barrier outside of the 1 year they went to the title. They got to the playoffs and they defensively they couldn't keep up. I don't think that's what Incarnate Word is this year. Now for Sac State, we know what the MO is. Last week, I put in my article, I'm sure some of y'all read it. Last week was the first time I think I've seen Sac State put up an elite passing performance. They did have 3 picks, don't get me wrong, but it was the first time they were really able to the team was really carried by the passing attack. It was their first time all year that they didn't hit the 150-yard mark. And it was the first time all year that they topped the I believe the 300-yard mark. Well, they hit 300 at Cal Poly, but the first time they hit 400 for sure. 3 passing touchdowns last week. It was the first time I've seen this offense be dynamic in both aspects. Pierre Williams, Marshall Martin were able to stretch the field vertically and make a lot of plays in big moments for them. That's going to be the key. Can Caleb Culp, can one of these corners or DBs slow down the 2 options in the passing game? When you get past Marshall Martin and Pierre Williams, they don't really have anyone else that scares me in terms of a pass catcher. And so that's the question I have about Sac State. Jake Dunaway, 17 passing touchdowns, 13 picks. He's the passing quarterback, but I think we got to give a little bit of love to Asher O'Hara. I know he doesn't get the recognition as the passing quarterback. He's thrown only 88 attempts this year, but on those 88 passing attempts for Asher O'Hara, he's completed 76% of those for over 700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. Every time he touches the ball in the air, it's an explosive play because teams aren't expecting it. I would imagine they got to draw something up for him to put the football in the air and try to create some explosive plays against Incarnate Word. Cameron Scatabo, 1,200 yards rushing, 7 yards per carry. We know what he is. Asher O'Hara on the ground as well, 19 rushing touchdowns. And Marcus Fulcher has also been a very, very underrated piece of this rushing attack with 7 rushing touchdowns this year. The question becomes, can Sac force some turnovers and establish the rushing attack and win the time of possession? It's kind of like the flip side of what I'm expecting for North Dakota State versus Samford. And on top of that, too, how they got through 1 week. How distracting is another week of GJ Kinney going to Texas State? Is that going to be any more distracting this week than it was last week, especially with a halfway across the country's trip to Sacramento? I don't know. And also, I did see some things in one of the Facebook groups about the weather possibly being extremely rainy, which does favor Sac State in that one due to the fact of how they run the football. I've went back and forth on this one like 5 or 6 times, guys. I'm telling you, I'm 50-50 on it. And I got a little bit of pressure. I went 9-0 last week. I really want to keep my perfect streak going. I'm 109-33 in picks this year. 109 wins, 33 losses this year, man. My record's impeccable. I really wanted to hit the 80% mark. And I'm gonna have to probably win out the season to do that. I got called out last week for picking no upsets. You know what? I'm gonna go with my gut here. Give me Incarnate Word for the upset. On the road at Sac State. Give me Incarnate Word by 4 points. Incarnate Word. Oh, what do I want the score to be? Oh, 35-31 Incarnate Word this weekend over Sac State in the upset. So I think Sac's probably the most beatable favorite of and Daniel just put in the chat. I think Sac State is beatable. and I think they're the most beatable favorite going into the weekend. Give me Incarnate Word with the upset. That'll be my one upset pick of the week. So to go back through for everyone who just tuned in, give me Montana State over William and Mary, South Dakota State over Holy Cross in a big win there. I think North Dakota State does what they do and just runs the football impressively over Samford, especially with the questions with Michael Hyer's health. And give me Incarnate Word with the 4-point upset 35-31 this weekend, which will set up in the semifinals next week, Montana versus South Dakota State and North Dakota State versus Incarnate Word. So the two semifinal games will ultimately be in the Dakotas. It'll be in Brookings and the Fargo Dome. So I'm definitely not count. I'm listen, Troy. I'm definitely not counting Sack out. That pick really. I'm still torn on it. I think both of those teams match up so extremely well, and either one can pull it out. Now, I will. Let me ask y'all this, because you know what, this show probably won't last too much longer. Listen, the call lines are open if you want to call in 701-779-9585. I'll probably spend 15 minutes or so answering chat questions or answering phone calls. Does how what percent chance would you do you guys give the winner of Incarnate Word Sac State in beating North Dakota State if that's the ultimate winner of that game in Fargo in the semifinals? Like, do you guys think Incarnate Word or Sac State? Like, give me a percentage. Who has the best chance of beating North Dakota State next week, if that's who they match up with? Or do you think either one of those teams has any sort of shot to pull off the road upset in a semifinal game in the Fargo Dome? Which I have been told by some North Dakota State fans that the semifinals is when the fans really do show up, and the Fargo Dome becomes terrifying for teams to travel in. Drizzy's got 41-38 UIW. I like that. Samford has zero chance. UIW did lose. They did lose to Southeastern Louisiana. I don't think they've seen an offense like Sacramento this year. I like that. They have to somehow keep Lindsey Scott and the 5 touchdown passes. I don't think they can do it. That's a fair assessment on that one. UIW will be fine. Lindsey makes plays no matter the situation. Got an MSU by 17. He said less than 0. Sac State has a 40-45. UIW 50% chance. Oh, Jersey, you're not very high on North Dakota State this year. A 50% chance for Incarnate Word. Oh man, that's stout. I'll give you that. 0% chance on either. 45% Sac State, 35% UIW. 5% chance, and that's being liberal. New teams coming to the Fargo Dome don't know how to handle it until it's too late. I give UIW the better chance. I just don't believe Sac State is national championship material. That's fair. This is what's so weird because out outside of North Dakota State, outside of the Bison, everyone kind of has this, Montana State made it last year. They have a national title way back in the day, but other than them, everyone's kind of got all the teams here are either teams that are just kind of just either reemerged as contenders or have like a narrative around that they can't get it done in the like Samford. No one was picking Samford to be here in the quarterfinals. And Incarnate Word's a newer FCS team. They haven't really been around. Sac State, everyone says that they're the team that can be regular season dominant but can't get it done in the playoffs. South Dakota State made that one national title run, ended up losing to Sam Houston, but everyone thinks they going to end up not making it to the Natty. William and Mary, you have a head coach who has won a national title at Richmond, but he hasn't done it at the school he's at now. And, I mean, outside of North Dakota State, no one's really proven themselves to be at the top of the FCS. I still think part of me wants to say that the potential, I'll say potential because you never know, the potential Montana State South Dakota State matchup, if that's the matchup that goes into the semifinals, I have a really strong feeling that could be that the winner of the national championship could easily come from that game. But I say this, and Dave's probably jumping in the chat, right? I know Dave is typing as fast as he furiously can. Every time North Dakota State gets to Frisco, they just find like another level. It's like an extra gear. They hit like a NOS pack in the back of like a turbo boost, and when they get to Frisco, they hit it, and they just hit it. They just go to another level, and so that's the one that's always kind of in the back of your head when you're picking these matchups is North Dakota State just going to find their rhythm out of nowhere. It was the second half of that Montana game, the Bison kind of finding their stride in the rushing attack, even without Hunter Lipke. Possibly. So that's the big question mark with them. His passing is that scary. I'm with Drizzy because of Lindsey. Just because of how explosive UIW's offense is, Lindsey Scott will make the plays. But if he makes 1 to 2 mistakes, UIW is definitely in trouble. They have to play perfect. That is fair. Like he can't throw a pick six to start the game. He can't throw a second dumb interception. And also, as much as the play was, listen, it was the play of the year. That play that he made last week against Furman off his back, hitting Darian Chafin in the end zone. It was the play of the year. And you cannot you're just not making those plays against the Bison, the South Dakota State defense. Like you have to play a lot more discipline than he was playing last week. Really and truly. Sac State probably should have lost to the Grizz. A lot of people say that, Daniel. A lot of people do say that. Let's see. Sac State would have a better chance to beat NDSU compared to UIW since the game would be at Sac State. That's true. That's true. Listen, Nicholas made a great point. I totally forgot about that. Sac State would actually host North Dakota State next week. I forgot they're the 2 seed. I was blanking out on the fact that, yeah. So if Sac State wins and North Dakota State has to go to Sac State, that will be extremely interesting. That could, because yeah, UIW would have to go to the Fargo Dome. So I would give Sac State a much better chance to beat North Dakota State compared to UIW, just due to the fact that they don't have to go to the Fargo Dome. Nicholas, this is why you're the man. I appreciate you reminding me of the seeding. NDSU is too big and too physical for all but 2 other teams. Yeah, I don't think they're. And Troy, I will say, I know some people might push back on this. I don't know if they're too big and too physical for William and Mary. William and Mary's front 7 is pretty stout, and the offensive line is pretty good. So I would say yes to a point, but I will say I do think William and Mary possibly has some size in the front 7 at least to hang in there. I don't know if they would get pushed around necessarily. They have multiple guys who are absolute ballers in that front 7, and their offensive line has been extremely physical at times. So I do think William and Mary is a bit underrated in terms of physicality and line of scrimmage play. D, I'll be flying out to Bozeman tomorrow. So I'll be in Montana all week. So I'll fly in tomorrow, get to spend the day in Bozeman, possibly be on campus tomorrow talking to some coaches. Shout out to my guy Dan for setting all that up. And the game will be Friday night. I'll have pictures and a bunch of, and I can't take videos of the game. So you won't catch any highlights from me, but I am going to try to get some footage of just the atmosphere, the entrance, which everyone knows how great it is, and I'm gonna try to get a little bit more environment videos instead of just game footage. But I will have full pictures coming from the game. MSU. That was my pick. Right now, I've already said it. So someone put me on the spot. If I had to pick a national champion right now, Troy, I'm picking Montana State just because of how hot they are right now. I would pick them right now to win the national title if I had to put money on anybody right this second. South Dakota State's program. Well, what they're on a, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle, I'm sure Dave will correct me if I'm pretty sure, isn't South Dakota State on a 3-game winning streak now over North Dakota State? And they haven't seen them in the playoffs in the past few years. So listen, that's 3 in a row. If they get that rematch, I'm a little bit selfish here because I do want to see Montana State go because I picked them. But is there a better scenario than North Dakota State, South Dakota State in the national championship? That would be legend. It would have to be legend. That would be the most fun and most anticipated national championship matchup we've probably had. I don't know how many. I don't know what you guys consider the most anticipated matchup we've had recently. Possibly the James Madison matchup, but that would be insane to see down there in Frisco. I want MSU versus NDSU. It's redemption season for the Cats. Beat the Grizz, win the Big Sky, win the Natty. The three things we're changing from last year. I love I love it. Lindsey Scott in a dome. Good luck. Better blitz them every time. Now that's true. They don't have the without the weather factor, Daniel, he would be terrifying to see. Sac State showed the secret weapon last week. Can't just play the run now. Sac State, baby. I like it, Wayne. I like the pick. Sac State plays better on the road than at home. Well, I had that wrong myself. Thought that NSDSU had the third, MSU had the two, but hey, we travel. We heard Northern Cali is nice this time of year. Hey, man, I'm good. I'm good. I promise. I'm completely over it. I'm feeling good. I went today, got all my cold gear, got me the thermal, got me the face cover, and I'm if y'all see me walking around like this and can't lower my arms just because I have on so many layers. I'm already kind of terrified about how cold it's going to be, but I'm excited to be down at that game. Take an extra set of thermals. Man, I went and bought everything I needed today. No worries there. I'd love for that rematch to be better than the Sam Houston State or JMU rematches since we border each other and crossover in the states. What's good, James? Yeah, Board Wars should be fun for us in the future when we move up to the Mountain West Conference. South Dakota State winning the whole thing. They'd probably be my. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, James, if NDSU, SDSU, or Montana State win the whole thing. Anybody else would be surprising. I feel like that's kind of how everyone's looking at it. Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State kind of had the hype coming into the season. You know, NDSU, MSU was there last year. South Dakota State was just there in the spring, was in the semifinals last year. But William and Mary, let's just like break it down on what the storylines would be if William and Mary makes a run to the national title this year after winning the CAA for the first time. And I think it was the first time since 2013 ish, 24, it's somewhere around 2014, 2013, somewhere in there. They win the CAA. Mike London wins his second national title with his second different CAA program. Because he won it with Richmond earlier in his career. No one would have seen that coming. Nobody would see that coming. Samford, God forbid they do it without Michael Hires being fully healthy. You have a true freshman quarterback in Quincy take over and lead them to a national title. And Samford's first national title in school history, it would be insane. And then on the other hand, Incarnate Word, GJ Kinney leads Incarnate Word. I want to repeat, Incarnate Word wins the national title with Lindsey Scott, a transfer from Nicholls State, a first-year head coach in GJ Kinney, who's about to take the Texas State job. And they go and win the national title. And you look at them, they'd be co-Southland champs. They would have had to beat Sac State, co-Big Sky champs, North Dakota State on the road, the 9-time defending national champions, and you'd have to possibly beat South Dakota State, Montana State, or William and Mary, and maybe Holy Cross. I'll throw them in there just in case. I mean, could you imagine? And I've been kind of ignoring Holy Cross. Holy Cross winning the national title would be absolutely insane. A Patriot League team going all the way to Frisco and getting it done. You got to give them their props. So I think the storylines would be crazy if anyone other than the big three won it this year. Let's see. NDSU versus MSU rematch. Oh, definitely not sleeping on Sac State. 2-game win streak versus the Bison, but the South Dakota State had never beat NDSU in the playoffs if forever. Oh man, definitely Walter. I'll definitely have to catch you at the game. You won't be able to miss me. I promise. I'll be the dude who is bundled up, dying of being too cold. If you haven't faced the cat, just can't understand how. I don't think Troy, I'm gonna be honest, there's some people in the chat who go watch film and because of the show have been kinda paying attention. But y'all see the views. When it's just strictly FCS playoffs, there's a lot of people who don't really, just wanna talk FCS playoffs, but man, if you haven't watched a Montana State game, I really don't think people understand how efficient or effective they are at running the football and just how dominant they really, it's coming. Like, you see the defense, they know exactly what's coming, and they cannot stop it, and I'm so excited to see it in person. I love watching good offensive line play in person, and that's what I'm most excited to watch this weekend. Just find a bottle of some Montana high octane, tie a few off, you won't even realize. William and Mary with the I like that. William and Mary with the upset. Allen, I'll be in Montana State. I'll be at Montana State William and Mary this weekend up in Bozeman. So you don't even have to face them unless you know how good they are. Yeah, you don't even have to they're just that good. Is MSU's run game scarier than Lindsey Scott? Um, I think they're about on par, Data. What separates it for me. Okay, so like they're both terrifying, and Lindsey Scott, his development this year, man, everyone needs to give him a round of applause. I never saw Lindsey Scott doing what he's doing right now. But what makes Montana State's run game so impressive to me is when you really do the research underneath about how they're doing it. They've both quarterbacks have been hurt at some point this year. They were missing their first team consensus FCS All-American running back. Um, they because they had to move what Marquis was a wide receiver. They had to move to running back, and he goes off for like 4 touchdowns in his first game, really starting at running back. And they're missing 2 starting offensive linemen and had to start a true freshman on the offensive line, and they're still putting up 300 plus yards per game, averaging like 7 yards per carry as a team. That's really the most terrifying thing about Montana State's rushing attack is that even when key pieces are missing, you can't stop it. They're missing offensive linemen. They're missing what, if I'm not mistaken, what they were missing their top 4 running backs to start the season. Tommy Malott goes down. Sean Chambers comes in and leads the country in rushing touchdowns 2 weeks later. And still is right there. I believe he finished the regular season second. I believe he's tied for the lead right now after the first round or the first game of their playoff run. It's the fact that they consistently don't miss a beat, even though they're missing key pieces. That's what I think makes Montana State's rushing attack a little bit more scary than what Lindsey Scott's doing. The ice. Chief, so I have heard the rumors. Based on what I was told, Dancy's gone, but I'll say this: it's supposed to be announced tomorrow if it's happening, Chief. So stay tuned tomorrow. But there is, I would say, a very strong likelihood that Coach Dancy is headed to Colorado with Prime. So stay tuned for that announcement, possibly tomorrow, based on what I was told. I don't see anyone beating the Cats mostly now. Man, prayers to his family and everyone close to him. I hate to hear that. I know you messaged me earlier about that. It reminds me of watching Michigan run the ball. I hate it for Corum DW. I hate that Corum's out for the season. I wanted to see what he could do against that Georgia defense this year, but listen, Donovan Edwards is no slouch, so I'm extremely excited to see what they do in the playoffs. And also, I will be previewing the FBS playoffs as well on the channel, so stay tuned for that. Probably coming out next week, if I had to imagine. Looks like the old school Nebraska run game. I'm telling you, I was at the game last week. There's rumors that Grayson McCall may come back for his senior year at Coastal, but he's going to make a choice after the ball game. Whatever he does, man, I'm excited for. I just hope he stays at Coastal one more year, goes out, wins the Sun Belt, and does his thing. I might be up at that bowl game, Alan. I'll let you know. I don't know if you're going to travel for that game. I applied to a bunch of bowl games just to work as a photographer to get some extra work in. And so if I'm up at that game and you're there, I'll hit you up. We'll have to connect at that game. One day I'll get Blue to slip up. I can't think of anything cooler than UIW taking the title in 2022. That'd be such a cool story. Man, there's so many even if the favorites win it, I think the storylines are abundant because if North Dakota State wins it, you have the 10th national title for NDSU. Montana State, their first title since what? I think 1984. And for South Dakota State, it'd be their first title ever. I wrote about it at the start of the season that this could be the year that um, this could be the year they finally get the national title. So um, I'm excited for whoever wins it. To be honest with you, there's storylines abundant, just all throughout the playoffs, depending on who wins the national title. Hey Ron, I already got someone. Listen, man, my God, his Daniel in the chat. My God, Dan's got me taken care of. He already warned me. You see, I was going to go to Bozeman, Ron. I wasn't thinking. I'm from Mobile, one of the biggest cities in the state of Alabama. So I thought I was just going to get off the plane, call an Uber, do all the things you do in the big city. And Daniel warned me and was like, "Bro, this is Bozeman, Montana in winter. Like you don't want to just be Ubering around here." And so I got set up with the rental car, all that good stuff. He's got me set up with potentially some coaches tomorrow. I'll be talking to them. Probably get to see some of the facilities up in Montana State. So Ron, Daniel's got me taken care of, man. I appreciate, and anyone at the game who watches the show from Montana State, even though I will say there's probably some people at Montana State that don't want to meet me. There were some people who are really, really upset in my Big Sky All Conference selections. So if anyone's upset with that, I apologize. I still love y'all. I hope to see y'all at the game, but there's probably some people at Montana State. There definitely was some people at Montana that weren't very happy. So they might have to come over from their school and get a word in with me because they were not happy with the Big Sky All Conference teams that we released. Rooting for Samford to shake up these conference rankings. If I think it was I think it was Craig Haley put in his article, sir, if Sanford beats North Dakota State this weekend, especially with the backup quarterback, that it could be one of the biggest upsets in FCS playoff history. So that's kind of what's on the line there is that if Sanford wins this weekend, I'll say this: if Sanford goes into the Fargo Dome and beats North Dakota State, they got a hell of a shot to go ahead and get to the national title. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. If they win this weekend, they're rolling. So as Will, I heard Willie Simmons. Willie Simmons, I think, is going to be back at FAMU right now. Dave, things could change by the day. I think people sometimes get confused where they'll hear uh they'll hear a report on like a news channel or about from a reporter or a tweet, and they take it as like, okay, well, he said that on December 7th, but if something changes in between the 7th and the 21st, they get so mad, like, well, you said this. It's like, bro, things change with coaching searches. Right now, I think Willie Simmons is going to stay at FAMU, Dave. Dancy is potentially going to be gone as of tomorrow. And I think that's where it sits right now because I'm trying to think because he already hired an OC. I don't think Willie Simmons would leave FAMU's head coaching job for anything more than an offensive coordinator position. Willie Simmons turned down a quarterback coaching position, Dave, at Clemson, where he potentially could have coached Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's going to Colorado to take anything less than an OC job. So I think Willie Simmons is safe. Dancy's probably on his way out, though. Appreciate y'all, man. Looks like the kid on the Christmas story. Listen, tomorrow on the round table, I got like a little bit of a joke plan. Uh, no offense, Jackson State fans, I got to make a little bit of a joke. I'll be decked out in everything I'm wearing to the game tomorrow. I'll have the face mask on, the beanie, the hoodie, the gloves, everything. So, y'all see me wrapped up. I promise. Y'all see my eyes. That's it at the game. If they're upset, that means you're doing something right. Exactly. Appreciate that, man. He said the Grizz feds are always whining. Holy Cross would be a bigger upset than Sanford, I think. If Hires is healthy, Daniel, and Hires plays, then yes. If Sanford beats North Dakota State with a true freshman quarterback in only his second start, I think that's I think I think that's a bigger upset. I'll say that. If they do it with a backup quarterback, that's what will make it the bigger upset. But I will agree, if Hires is healthy, Holy Cross may be a much bigger upset on the road in Brookings over South Dakota State. Oh, sir, I'm not going to be at the Coastal Carolina. I got a wedding that day, but I wish I could go. Okay, hey, you got to go to those weddings, man. At least they waited till bowl season. At least they waited till bowl season. I would love to see a different team than Norm in the national championship game. Dennis Thurman, for what I was told, DW took a defensive analyst slash like assistant role at Colorado with Prime. So he's going to be on the way to Colorado as well, based on what I was told. So Dennis Thurman is on his way to Colorado, won't be back at Jackson State. Colorado will be completely flipped next year. I'm excited to watch. SWAT schools better start finding money. Dancy deserves better. That's what it's kind of like it's like a catch-22 though, Leon, because I think what's happening is you have a lot of people speaking about things that I don't think they necessarily really understand, where it's like, well, Jackson State should have done this, that they should have done this with the money. It's like, despite all the rumors, I'm talking about outside of all the rumors about mismanagement, because listen, I don't know. I'm the first one. The reason this show I think is so good is that I don't come on here and speak about stuff I don't really know. So I don't have any information on the accusations that have been made on social media, Scotty's channel, about the mismanagement of any funds or anything like that. So I can't speak on that. Outside of that, though, I think like there's this weird misconception from a lot of P5 reporters and P5 and FBS channels and social media accounts and things like that that are like, well, Jackson State could have just pulled uh 5 million out of the woodwork. And it's like, do you not understand how much $5 million is for a head football coach, and on top of the assistant pool that you have to throw out there and the recruiting budget that Jackson State would have to do? You just have a bunch of people, I think, speaking on a situation that they're not really well informed on. It's like, man, the money Jack State was never going to compete financially with Colorado. Like um that's not what people are upset about. Like no one expected Jackson State to match the offer. But with the Dancy situation, I just, like I've said on the show repeatedly, I just don't think Valley is a winnable situation, especially for just a normal coach. Like, I'm sorry, I got this from a SWAC alum. He played in the SWAC a while back, and he ended up playing his ball at a SWAC school, and said that when he was recruited to Valley, even in his day, that he wouldn't even like, he was like, listen, the coaches, it don't matter who you put at Valley until they get until they get the facilities and everything, like there's just no way to win. You can't win there. It's an unwinnable situation at Valley, and I do think Dance is a better coach than what people are probably giving him credit for. So I would love to see him get another opportunity. But regardless if it's at Colorado or it's at Jackson State or another more advantageous situation for his career. And I think that's kind of where I am on Dancy right now. Because when he makes it Fargo, he'll want to come back again and again. And I'm not gonna be skiing, I promise y'all that. DT is good personnel. UIW can win it all. They score more points. Any chance that Dooley may make assistant coaches at SU? He's going to have to make a change, I think. There's a chance. I haven't heard about him making any moves, but Michael, I'll report on the channel and on social media if I hear it about any assistant moves. I think your best possibilities are possibly I don't know who the quarterback coach is off the top of my head. That could be one. And I think possibly DB coach could be a move that he makes. But other than that, it's the first year of his staff. He might, I think, I know the D line coach is fine. O line should be good. Wide receiver should be good. There might just be some minor personnel moves off the field that Dooley wants to make. Yeah, JSU couldn't compete with the CU offer regardless. What do you think about Hill leaving Weaver State for BYU? It's it, it's a double-edged sword too, Troy. I think it's a brutal loss for Weber State. I felt like Weber State was, like, kind of right on the precipice of, like, being I mean, they had so much talent this year, and they had a lot of it coming back, but it's a great opportunity at BYU. Have a program who's going to the Power 5 level next year. Hill is a hell of a defensive-minded coach. It's an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Now the question becomes, where does Weber go from here? Is there someone internally that they can promote up? Possibly, or is there a name, someone who has been on the West Coast, can recruit those West Coast states that they can go get? I'll defer to my Weber State guy. I'll have to text him after the show. Um, my guys over at Weber State Weekly, but right now I think they're gonna have to move fast because there's a lot, especially with how hyped the transfer portal is right now. You gotta move right now on going to get a coach. Let's see. I agree. Yeah, I want Willie Simmons to stay in the SWAC at least. Hope A&T does good in the CAA next year. It's gonna be a rough year one. I think it's gonna be a rough year one, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see how they do. Man, I'm probably not gonna listen. I'm not gonna be a prom page D. Like I'm probably not gonna be a Colorado page, but so there's notable stuff. I've already told you guys this channel is kind of flexible, man. I can do multiple different things. I already said next year I'm keeping my FCS coverage. Listen, man, I'm a voter. The website's kicking. We have all American teams, all conference teams. I love covering FCS football, so the FCS coverage isn't going anywhere. Already had a plan to add a little bit of more add a little bit more P5 content to the channel like I did 2 years ago. I think a lot of y'all like that where, we'll stick with FCS, but we'll have a little bit of FBS intermingled in here. But man, I'm not just going to be a Colorado. Like I probably won't be at the press conferences. I ain't going to be at the media days, nothing like that. I'll be at all the FCS media days, but I'll just kind of cover games during the season at the P5 level. Valley is by far the toughest job in America. Let's see, $5 million for an FCS coach is like hitting the lotto for that billion. Chris Kleiman topped out at 750K after winning 4 titles. Shout out to Chris Kleiman too, Dave. Finally broke through and won the Big 12 last year. I mean this year, man. So shout out to him. I remember when he was hired at K-State. I was a student there. Everybody was so excited for that hire, and I'm so glad he finally uh, he finally got it done. I'm really happy for him. And that's what I was on a show last night, and they were saying why couldn't they come up with 2-3 million for prom? And I was like, man, North Dakota State, Montana can't come up with 2-3 million for their coaches. It's not gonna that's not gonna happen. Oh, Williams from Graham is the QB coach. Appreciate that, Michael. But yeah, I'll let you know if they make any changes. I think he knows the Big Sky's gonna be tougher next year. Eastern Washington's got a bounce back run. That was a team that I think really took a step back this year. He said this is CU pace now skill plus. Appreciate you, Troy. But listen, guys, I'm about to get out of here. I gotta leave really, really early for the airport tomorrow morning. So I'll be headed up to Bozeman. If you see me at the game, say what's up. I'm really, really excited to get up there for a playoff game. But listen, guys, I'll be back tomorrow. Roundtable with Scotty. You already know what we're talking about. All things Prom to Colorado, possibly a little bit talk about the Celebration Bowl. And you never know with me and Scotty on the roundtable, it can go one of a million different directions. Also, interviews on the channel are starting to come. The off season is rolling. I got some big names lined up, so stay tuned for all that. Predictions for this weekend's quarterfinals dropping on the website tomorrow. All conference and all American teams are going to continue rolling out. We've already dropped our Big Sky and ASUN all conference teams already on the website, thebluebloodspod.com. But guys, until next time, I'll see y'all then. But right now, the Blue Bloods are out.